Welcome to Leo's Indie Corner, where I, Leo, talk about indie games from all corners of the internet and my Switch's eShop. First off, this is a new solo series, and Matthew's making one too. The purpose of the series is to let me talk about indie games in my collection that I really enjoyed and review them and talk about why I love them so much. They're great games, and I'd really like to share them on the internet. So I decided to make a solo series so then we didn't have to go through all the work of splicing audio together and whatnot. The first game I'm going to be reviewing on the channel is called Hollow Knight. Now, Hollow Knight is a very dear game to my heart, and I wish that I could have made this video sooner, but here it goes. First off, we need to talk about what is Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is a game made by Team Cherry, an amazing game developer company, and it's a Metroidvania about bugs in Hollow Nest, a ruined kingdom in which a great calamity occurred an unknown number of years ago. So, you're basically a bug, a nameless bug, with a sword, which is called a nail, going through a ruined insect kingdom. And that goes for a lot of interesting themes, because it's like, you don't really see a lot of games, especially Metroidvania, with bugs. The whole concept of Metroidvania has been explored by the indie developers, but I feel like Hollow Knight really captures what a Metroidvania is. First off, let's talk about the art style. The art style is amazing. Instead of having that pixely aspect, and instead of having that rugged 3D, first off, pixel graphics are way overdone in the indie genre, I would say. And second off, 3D graphics require a team, and Team Cherry is only 5 or 6 people. 3, 4, or 5. So they pulled off this really nice art style. It's an art style filled with really cool, blues, greens, purples. It is a really cool art spectrum, and it really is dark. The game itself is easily viewable and good to see, but the game's dark looking. It's all very hand drawn. Not actually hand drawn, but it's it has that drawn 2D art style, you know? You really have to see it for yourself, and it's beautiful. It shows how much effort they put into the art style. The backgrounds are incredibly well made and are moving. All the colors seem good put together. Everything seems like it has a purpose, even if it really doesn't. There's a point, even the colors contrast. The darker colors of the areas really contrast with the white of the soul that you collect, and the orange, infectious goop spread across the land. And it really makes it a very interesting place to adventure in. Second, we'd like to talk about the plot. Now, the plot is a very weird thing. The plot itself is very, very hard to understand if you're just starting off the game. So, I don't want to spoil the game. All I'm going to say is, you're not going to know anything when you first start up the game. You're going to get a poem from a random character that you don't understand who it is and why it makes sense. And they're going to show you a cutscene of something that you won't understand. And then the game's going to start. And it's going to be... You're basically going to be thrown into this world with almost no actual, purpose. But slowly, your purpose becomes ever more realized. And it really comes together to be a very nice plot. It's not bad. It's not too complex, but it's not too simple. But I'm not going to say that the plot is perfect. I know that they're trying to go for a show, don't tell kind of atmosphere, but sometimes the plot seems congested, and and you might need to watch a little bit of your lore videos right on our platform of YouTube in order to fully understand the plot. Because, like, it does it with very little words, so you really can't understand it. Let's talk about the actual gameplay. The gameplay is very well put together. You start off with a jump and a slash, and that's it. But then, very, very early into the game, you learn about Soul. Soul is this viscous white goop that you can get inside of your bug shell, and you basically just, heal with it. So it creates an interesting mechanic in which when you're hit during a boss fight, you can heal up. And most of the bosses have time to let you heal. Some bosses are really fast. We'll talk about the bosses later, though. The gameplay is fluid. There's nothing in the game that makes it seem overly complicated or unfair. The jumps are a lot floatier, I might add, than when you're normally playing a platformer. Like, they have a lot more weight to them when they come down, but you can jump higher. I feel like that's a good decision because it lets you time your jumps better and give you more skill in your jumping capabilities, instead of just pulling a Mario and going, pull, you got an arc. Instead, you can choose the length of your arc in a very, very unique set. The gravity is also weird, where you fall slow. Like, slow compared to other games, but, like, you can see that the game has some definite different gravity system. You also have a heal, which, I've already talked about, but over time you also get spells, which are like normal Metroidvania items. You have a downward stomp, kind of. You have a super dash, like Super Metroid. You have double jump. You have an item that lets you swim in acid water, which I think promotes more backtracking than anything else. I don't really like that ability very much, but all the other items are good. They really do seem connected and simple and not too complex. The only thing that could be complex is the scream upward attack, which it's really only useful in certain situations where it's like the boss is incredibly above you, or you have a really tough enemy that you don't want to get near, so you just scream in their face above you. So the gameplay is really fluid. Everything about the gameplay is really nice. For next, let's talk about the exploration in the game. You've heard about all these different ways to explore, but exploration in the game is a kind of a meh. Here's the deal. The game is gigantic, okay? The world is gigantic. I should probably talk about the world before I talk about anything else past that. The world is gigantic. It's exponentially larger than any indie game should be. Like, the game itself has so many areas. It's like a full-on, title. It's like a full-on $60 title, except that it's only for $20. The game itself has so much to offer that it's crazy. But there's the thing. There's so much inside of the game that you might not know what you need. Like, you might not know where you need to go. Like, when I first wanted to get the Super Dash in a place where I needed it, I needed to go from one side of the map all the way up to another side and went, oh, I gotta get this item. I actually looked it up. And I know that that's kind of not what you're supposed to do, but I did it anyway. I looked it up because I was stuck, and I was searching all around, and I found that I needed to find an item. And I found the item, so then I could get the item, that I needed. And that's how it went. So that's the only thing I have to say. Like, I know that it's great that they don't give you any pointers, they don't force you to get anything, but they only mark a few things on your map. And that's the final boss and the 3 MacGuffin locations. That's it. And I really feel like they could mark like important locations, like places where you need to get stuff to do the thing to win. Because there's the thing, you need to get all the things to win. To get all 3 MacGuffins and win. And that's the only real thing I don't like about it. Now, the settings. The settings are great. Everywhere you go in the game seems like its own separate area, except for a few other places, and that changes quickly. So you go inside of this like fading town, and it's all lonely and isolated and lonely and sad. And then you go inside of the Forgotten Crossroads, and it's more of the same thing. And then you get a drastic shift when you go into a place that I won't name, and everything's crazy different. Like, it's a lot brighter, everything's different, it's a very dynamic area. And then you go into a completely different area, and then you go into one of the best areas of the game, the City of Tears. The City of Tears is one of the best places I've ever been in. It literally has everything. It is a beautiful city. It is amazing. If you haven't seen it, just look it up. It's a beautiful looking place. It has dynamic sub-areas. It has everything a game would need in that area. Now let's talk about combat. Combat in this game is very, very hit or miss. Dead meme, but you know. The combat is either you love it or you hate it. Because the combat is very, very varied. There are enemies in the game in which they will kick you across the room 1,000 times over, and no matter what you try to do, you cannot seem to stop them. And then you realize that you could have been using your spells the entire time and win. But then you're so focused on healing. Soul management is something that you really need to keep a part of. But that's not combat. Combat is nail. You hit him with your nail, you get soul, and then you use your spells so then you can promptly take out the boss faster. So it creates an interesting system in which you don't get hit, you don't need to heal. So you do more damage, so then the battle goes faster. So it creates a loop in which you automatically are getting better and better. If you get better, you get better rewards. Things go faster. You're not stuck suffering against a boss that moves 1,000 miles per hour. And I think that's a very good mechanic, but at the same time, for people that are less skilled, you have an absolute opposite, in which you hit them with your nail, you get hit maybe even more than once, or you get hit by a critical move that deals 2 hearts of damage, masks, whatever, and you're stuck recovering instead of actually defeating the guy. And you're stuck in a loop in which the boss kicks your butt, and then you have to heal because you don't want to die and restart. Or maybe you just try and you fail and then you restart. That's the problem. But luckily, some of the bosses remedy this, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. The bosses in this game are probably some of the best bosses I've ever seen in any video game ever. Rivaled with some bosses from games like Cuphead or Dark Souls. And it really shows. Because the bosses, they're tailored for the ability that you're going to get, or you have, or you need. Like, there's a specific strategy for every single boss. There are some reskins of bosses, but they're kind of like, you know, in the extra mode in the Kirby games, where you can fight a same version of the boss, except stronger. The EX bosses, like the 2.0 and Planet Robot, those. That's what Hollow Knight does, except it's implemented inside of the story instead of it being in extra mode. You could call that padding, but you could also call it extra difficulty for those people that want the true ending. So, yeah. All the bosses, very unique, very fun time. If you won't meet all the bosses most likely on your first playthrough. That's also what I like about it. You could get a lot of different things, you could explore a lot of different places, and then you realize Oh crud, I missed an entire portion of the map. But I didn't need to go there, so why would I? And then you end up going there and you find the free DLC that just happens to be tucked in. Here's what else we're going to talk about, the free DLC. What? This game has free DLC? Yes, it does. It has 4 packs of 3 free DLC. Technically, 3 if you don't count the update that basically fixed a bunch of glitches and added a few things, but not a lot. You got Hidden Dreams, Lifeblood, Groom Troop, and God Home update, God Master, whatever. And basically, they make an already good game a gigantic game, even more gigantic, by filling it with a boss rush mode, a giant side quest with new bosses, and even more harder forms of bosses that you can fight. It basically piles on content to a game that already had so much content, and the game still costs $20. And it makes it great. Now you might be thinking, I don't want to pour all my time into a Metroidvania. Oh boy. Well, you'll see very fast that you will not spend $20 and then play the game for 5 hours and then be finished like some other lesser quality indie games. Hollow Knight is very different in the way that it handles content. It has 120 hours of single player content if you're going for the 100% completed. Perhaps even more if you're trying to go even further than that. Then you have speed runs and something else that I'd like to talk about, Steel Soul mode. Steel Soul mode is a mode in which you can play the entire game without dying once. And if you do die once, you restart from the beginning. Now there's the thing, you're probably shaking in your head right now. Wait a minute, this game is 120 hours long and I'm not allowed to die once, and you're talking about the difficulty? Well, do not be worried, because after you've completed the game, like I have, Steel Soul mode will not be half as challenging. You would think that the game is padded, but in reality, most of the time that you spend in the game is trying to figure things out and where everything is. It makes it so that the game is really just a skeleton, and you can explore, and the exploration fills the gaps. And it really does make it an amazing experience to play, and it's just a great game. The characters are upbeat, NPCs are really fun to be around. Some of the boss fights, specifically when you go inside of this praying mantis village and you fight bosses called the Mantis Lords, they're really exhilarating because they're a great step up from the bosses that you usually fight. You got bosses that are fast, that are tough, that deal 2 masks of damage instead of 1. You got all these crazy stuff, and a gigantic world to explore. I couldn't recommend this game enough. In fact, I would say that it's one of my favorite games of this decade, really. Like, I've played a lot of games, but Hollow Knight does not trump them all, but they're on foot with all of them. You got games like Smash Bros. Ultimate, Minecraft, Cuphead. Hollow Knight is with those titles, and I feel like that says something about it. So, if you really want a fun Metroidvania experience made by indie developers, Hollow Knight is really the game for you. And there's a sequel on the way, so, that there's that too. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So, make sure to check Hollow Knight out. Stupid bit. Leave a like, subscribe. Hit that notification bell for more Fortnite funny moments. And remember to keep your young Sheldons pop culturing planet and continue to be gamers.